Hello everyone, I'm very glad that you listened to my story. Please give me a follow and like the video if you enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide feedback so I can improve the sound quality. Yes, I will now continue the unfinished story. Chapter 15, Chase. Chapter 15, Chase. Lin Mu stopped in his tracks upon hearing the voice. He hoped that things would not progress as he was imagining them. He turned back to see four men standing behind him. He had seen them standing in the tannery when he was selling the snow-veiled hair. As many people were staring at Lin Mu when he was carrying the snow-veiled hair, he had not noticed that these four men had a greedy look in their eyes when he sold the snow-veiled hair for 70 silver coins. "Hey brat, answer us, where did you find the snow-veiled hair?" said the man who had called Lin Mu. "And tell us truthfully or you'll have to face the consequences," added another man. All four men looked rugged and gave off vibes that they were up to no good. Lin Mu had not seen these guys ever before, so did not know whether they were hunters. If they were hunters, Lin Mu would not worry as much, as they would not do anything rash, but if they were not, then it would be a different situation. "I found and caught the snow-veiled hair in the western edge of the forest," said Lin Mu, lying through his teeth. Lin Mu did not want to expose the location of the hunting shack where he was living in. These men did not look like they were decent and would definitely come to Lin Mu if they did not find the snow-veiled hair. Not to mention all the secrets of the ring which he did not want others to find out about. "Is that so, huh? So you wouldn't mind showing us the place yourself?" the man standing at the front asked with an evil smile on his face. The other men already looked like they were already getting impatient and would attack Lin Mu if he did not agree. Okay, I'll show you guys," spoke Lin Mu. Lin Mu had no intention of following through with the intentions of the men. He would find a suitable opportunity and run away at the first sight of danger. Lin Mu even wondered that if he did not get an opportunity to run, he would just take them to the area which was destroyed by the unknown beast and try to hoodwink his way out from there. But before he could continue his train of thought, the man spoke again. "If you're sure of it, then you should have no problem handing over the silver coins you got from the clerk to us. We'll give it back once we catch a snow-veiled hair, and besides there are many thieves these days, the money will stay safe with us." Another man spoke with an obvious threat in his voice. Lin Mu now understood that these men never wanted to get the location of snow-veiled hair but rather just wanted to get their hands on his money. Knowing that talking any more would be useless, a plan quickly formulated within Lin Mu's mind. He would have to take a certain risk but would be able to save his money and get away from these men. Lin Mu took a few steps backward and in the blink of an eye broke into a sprint before those men could grab him. "Where are you going, brat? Stop! Catch him!" Lin Mu put all his strength in running from the men. The training he did increased his endurance and allowed him to run for a longer time. Even still, Lin Mu was only in the 4th stage of the body tempering realm and there was no way he could keep up this pace. The thieves who were after him were in a higher stage than him. 2 of them were in the 5th stage of the body tempering realm and the other 2 in the 6th stage of the body tempering stage. The thieves would eventually catch up with Lin Mu, so he could only hope his plan works. Lin Mu kept on running towards the main part of the town. Once he reached there, the presence of the guards should be able to dissuade the men from pursuing him. Halfway to the town, Lin Mu's legs grew tired and revolted in pain, but he kept on running. He realized that he had overestimated himself after yesterday's training. "That brat will not be able to run for much longer, speed up. He's just a weak twerp, I'll show him a taste of what it's like to offend me." The thieves were yelling at the top of their voices, trying to intimidate Lin Mu. Then the worst thing that Lin Mu feared for happened. He started to lose feeling in his legs, and they had grown too sore after running for 10 minutes straight. Lin Mu was still 5 minutes away from the town, and the thieves had reduced the distance between them. In this desperate time, Lin Mu had a sudden moment of enlightenment. He chanted the calming Heart Sutra, and its waves started to spread through his body. Even though his legs still felt sore and he was out of breath, Lin Mu was able to pull through and sped up once again, putting more distance between him and the thieves. The thieves finally noticed that not only Lin Mu was not slowing down, he actually increased his speed. "How's this brat still running? Keep on running, he should be on his last legs." Lin Mu finally entered the town, but he was still away from the area where there were more guards. There were some people around who noticed the madly running Lin Mu and then saw the men chasing him. Seeing the people around and no guards, Lin Mu started the next part of his plan. Lin Mu pulled on the coin pouch tied to his waist and shouted with all his mouth. "Thieves! Thieves want to steal my money, help!" The people around heard Lin Mu's cries and became alert. Some people clutched their coin pouches while others pulled out their weapons. Thieves were not uncommon in the town, but it was rare to see them trying to rob from people in broad daylight, that too while chasing their victim through the open streets where people would notice. The thieves chasing Lin Mu gritted their teeth in rage. They knew that even if they catch Lin Mu and get his money, they will have to leave the town or the guards would definitely imprison them. Now that even Wu Lim City's guards were here in the northern town, the town's own guards seemed to be on edge, punishing crooks for the slightest grievance. "I'm gonna split that brat's legs once I catch him," one of the thieves furiously spoke. Seeing that he had caught the notice of people and alerted them, Lin Mu did something that surprised the thieves. He threw his coin pouch in a small crowd of people and shouted, "Leave me, I don't want the money anymore." The coin pouch hit one of the persons standing in the crowd but did not hurt him and just plopped down, not exactly how a pouch heavy with coins would. The thieves gawked at this action of Lin Mu. "Haha, looks like that boy finally gave up. That's a shame, I was itching to break his bones." The thieves stopped chasing Lin Mu and went towards the crowd. The man that was hit with the pouch was now holding it in his hand and had a confused look on his face. The thieves approached the man holding the pouch and pulled out their daggers and clubs. "Give us the coin pouch and no one has to get hurt?" The man leading the thieves spoke. To their surprise, the man straight up held out the coin pouch for them to take. The thieves had expected some resistance or negotiation, but this was completely different. "Can't believe thieves have such low standards now." The man who was holding the coin pouch spoke with a hint of disdain in his voice. The thieves were a little confused by the man's statement but did not mind it, as they had heard much worse before and did not want to get into a conflict if they were getting the easy way out. Once the leader of the thieves held the coin pouch in his hand and felt its weight, he understood the man's statement and his face fell. He peered into the coin pouch and found a meager sum of 5 copper coins in it. "God damn it, that brat fooled us." The other thieves looked at the leader with a puzzled look until he emptied the pouch in his hand and showed them the loot. All the thieves felt anger rise by a few notches at being fooled by Lin Mu, and their eyes turned red. By the time the thieves got the coin pouch, Lin Mu had already ran far ahead and reached an area where there were plenty of guards around. Though just as an extra precaution, he still kept on running and turned towards a desolate alley. When he stopped to catch his breath and rest his legs, he found himself in front of a familiar shop. Chapter 16, Shopping. Chapter 16, Shopping. Lin Mu looked up and saw the familiar Jingwei's Emporium written on the signboard. With his legs sore from all the running, Lin Mu wanted to plop down right then and there on the floor, but then decided against it. He pulled out the rolled-up pelts of the black-horned rabbit and thorn-tailed rat before walking into the shop. Everything was the same as yesterday, dust everywhere and no person at the counter. Wanting to rest, Lin Mu found an old stool in the corner and sat on it, not minding the dust on it. He rested his legs till they did not feel as sore as before and he could walk again normally. Lin Mu must have rested for more than 30 minutes, yet no one came to check on him. There seemed to be no sign of the woman from before. It's been so long, yet no one is bothering to check the shop. Are they not afraid of getting anything stolen? I guess no one even comes to the alley itself, not to mention this shop. Lin Mu wondered how the shop owner even survived considering the situation of the business. Pushing his thoughts aside, he walked up to the counter and rang the small bell kept on it. Unlike before, he did not even have to wait for 10 seconds before the woman walked out of the door behind the counter. "What are you here for today?" the woman questioned with an expressionless face. "I brought more pelts to sell," Lin Mu said with a little pep in his voice. The woman unrolled the pelts and checked them. Not finding anything wrong with them, she put them on the side and pulled out a coin pouch from under the counter. "I'll give you the same price as before, 30 coppers. The woman stated. "That's fine, but I also need a few more things," replied Lin Mu. He had originally thought of buying a weapon and some things from other shops, but decided to try his luck here instead, hoping to get a better deal. "What else do you need?" "I want 2 pouches, a large sack, and a weapon." The woman raised an eyebrow in question but did not speak. She walked out from behind the counter and went towards a shelf on the left. The woman gestured for Lin Mu to follow her, which he did. "Pick whatever sized pouch you want from here." Lin Mu eyed the haphazardly placed pouches on the shelf. They were mixed together and it was a little difficult to find the size he wanted. Lin Mu searched around and found 2 suitable pouches and asked for the price. "How much for these 2 pouches?" 10 coins for the smaller one and 15 for the bigger one," the woman said with a straight face, to which Lin Mu nodded. She then moved again towards a corner where a pile of sacks was kept and gestured for Lin Mu to pick, clearly not wanting to touch the dusty sacks herself. Lin Mu picked a sack that was big enough to cover half of him if he stretched it out. "That sack will cost 25 copper coins." "I'll take it," said Lin Mu. The woman looked at Lin Mu and then spoke with a stern tone. "What kind of weapon do you want and how much is your budget?" The woman seemed to be questioning whether Lin Mu would be able to afford a weapon after paying for the sack and pouches. Lin Mu understood the woman's tone and put his right hand inside his robe and pulled out 15 silver coins, pretending as if they were kept in there all this while. The boy clearly was not carrying those coins with him. "I'm sure of my senses. Seems there's more to him than I thought," the woman said inwardly, concealing her shock. "I would like a suitable sword for hunting," stated Lin Mu, unaware of the woman's thoughts. She went back to the counter, with Lin Mu following behind. "You don't have any specific idea of what kind of sword you want?" asked the woman. "To be honest, I've never used a sword before. That's why I asked you to suggest a suitable one," replied Lin Mu with an embarrassed face. She was not bothered by the boy's embarrassment and spoke. "What stage of the body tempering realm are you at?" "I reached the 4th stage of body tempering recently," said Lin Mu. The woman stood and thought for a minute, after which she opened the door at the back of the counter and walked inside. The woman stayed inside for 10 minutes while Lin Mu waited patiently, fiddling with the coins in his hands. The door opened and out walked the woman along with an old man. The man looked ancient, and it seemed as if he already had 1 foot in the grave. The man had shoulder-length white hair and a long messy beard. His face was full of wrinkles, yet his eyes seemed to be full of vigor. He was dressed in a spotless white robe and was wearing a black beaded bracelet on his left arm. The old man's gaze sent a chill down Lin Mu's spine and left him unable to breathe. Seconds felt like an eternity to him, and just when he was about to faint, Lin Mu felt a rumble in his mind. He felt as if thousands of monks were chanting in unison, their voices turning into an unyielding force in his mind. When the chants reached the highest volume, a stream of energy spread out from the ring on his right hand and spread throughout his body. All of this seemed as if it took a long time, but happened in an instant. Then, in the next moment, everything returned to normal. The old man's gaze no longer felt as imposing as before to Lin Mu. He took a deep breath and was about to speak when the old man interrupted him. "I'm the owner of this shop, Jing Wei. You can call me Old Man Zheng." The man spoke with a hoarse voice. "I been told you want a sword that's suitable for you." The old man continued upon seeing the silence of the boy. "Yes, I want a sword that I can easily learn to use." Lin Mu spoke with a little difficulty, to which the old man nodded. What's your dominant hand? Jingwei asked. The right one. And you say you are at the fourth stage of body tempering? Yes, said the old man while stroking his beard. Yes, I am, answered Lin Mu, who was now feeling uncomfortable in the presence of the old man. Jingwei turned his side to the woman, which she understood, and went back inside. She came back a minute later with 7 different swords in her hands. She placed them on the counter and then stood at the side, not speaking a single word the whole time. Try lifting the first sword, said the old man, pointing towards a sword. Lin Mu walked up to the counter and picked up the sword effortlessly. The sword was very mundane, not having any special features. Such a sword could be found anywhere in the world. Lin Mu felt the grip of the handle, finding it a little uncomfortable. The old man seemed to have noticed this and said, "Try the next one." Lin Mu picked up the next sword and felt as if the weight of the sword was not balanced. It seemed to be a little more on one side than the other. This also did not escape the old man's sight either, and he ordered Lin Mu to keep on trying the other swords. Lin Mu tried all the swords but did not feel comfortable with any of them. As Lin Mu kept on trying the swords one after another, the old man's interest kept on increasing. Finally, he asked Lin Mu to stop and whispered something to the woman. The woman broke her composure and a surprised expression manifested on her usual deadpan face upon hearing what the old man whispered. Lin Mu did not notice this as he was engrossed in the sword in his hand. The woman walked up to a shelf far to the right and pulled off the sheet that was covering it. That was the only shelf that was covered with a sheet in the entire shop. From it, she took out a sword that was completely wrapped with a cloth. She brought the sword to the old man and handed it to him. The old man unwrapped the sword and revealed it. It was a dull silver-colored short sword about the length of a forearm. Its handle was simple, made of wood, while its blade was straight and double-edged with 2 short grooves on its sides. Lin Mu's eyes lit up upon seeing the simple yet elegant sword. But as soon as the old man held it by its handle, Lin Mu once again felt an imposing presence emanate out of him. For a moment there Lin Mu saw a giant standing behind the old man, holding a blade that seemed to have gone through countless years of slaughter, giving off an aura that could only be described as death. Sensing what was happening, the woman panicked a little and placed her hand on the shoulder of the old man. Jingwei understood what he did and let out a sigh, after which the phenomenon disappeared. Chapter 17, First Sword. Chapter 17, First Sword. Lin Mu was able to gather his wits eventually in the end, and wisely chose to ignore the phenomenon that had occurred, not questioning the old man or the woman. He understood that there were some secrets that need not be exposed. If it was the Lin Mu of the past, he would have definitely questioned the old man, but now that he had experienced the wonders of the mysterious ring, he did not want to take any chance that may create needless conflict. After the phenomenon disappeared, the old man scrutinized Lin Mu, but did not find anything suspicious with him except for having an unfocused gaze. Determining that Lin Mu did not seem to have noticed the phenomena, Jingwei dropped his guard. "Come, lift this sword, see how you feel," the old man said with an expectant gaze. The woman standing behind Jingwei was looking on with bated breath, ready to act in case anything unusual happened. But it was all for naught as Lin Mu casually lifted the short sword. Seeing that nothing happened, the woman let out a sigh of relief. Holding the sword in his hand, Lin Mu felt as if it was the perfect sword for him. All the other swords he tried before were always lacking in some aspect, yet this sword felt perfect. Even a complete novice like Lin Mu could tell the sword was unusual, that an expert craftsman had created it. The old man was closely observing Lin Mu's every action, and with his years of experience, he could tell that Lin Mu liked the sword. "Now try swinging the sword and tell me how it feels," said Jingwei. Lin Mu nodded to Jingwei, as both the old man and the woman stepped back to give him some space. Lin Mu had never used a sword before, so the way he swung the sword was clumsy and full of flaws, yet it still incited a glimmer of approval in the eyes of Jingwei. Having tried the short sword a few times, Lin Mu liked it even more and had decided on buying it. I would like to buy this sword, Lin Mu affirmed. It will be 50, before the woman could complete her sentence, the old man interrupted her and spoke. The total cost is 30 silver coins. The old man had a teasing smile when he spoke. Lin Mu was stunned upon hearing the voice and then protested. But I specified my budget was 15 silver coins. The price includes the cost for other items, and also for appraising and choosing a suitable sword for you. And you have more than 30 silver coins with you, don't you? Jingwei asked with a mocking tone, yet his face was expressionless. Listening to the old man's tone, Lin Mu was about to object but then swallowed his words upon seeing the man's face. He understood that he had seen something he should not have, the old man's aura, and this was the price he had to pay. Considering the quality of the sword, it was not that overbearing either, thus Lin Mu decided to grit his teeth and just pay for it. Same as before, Lin Mu pretended to pull out the silver coins from his robe and pass them to the woman. The woman then gave Lin Mu 30 copper coins back as change, which made him feel a little helpless. After putting the coins away, the woman also gave Lin Mu a sheath for the sword. The sheath was the same size as the sword, but did not match its style. Why does the sheath not match it? Lin Mu questioned the woman, to which the old man replied. That short sword does not have its own sheath, it was always meant to be kept unsheathed. Seeing that Lin Mu was about to talk again, the old man continued. Besides, that sheath will help you to hide the sword's appearance. You don't want any strong hunters or thieves to snatch it from you, right? Yes, that makes sense. Thank you for thinking ahead for me. Lin Mu replied after understanding Jingwei's intentions. Thank you too, miss, Lin Mu said in a questioning manner. My name is Duan Ke, said the woman curtly. Ah yes, thank you Miss Duan Ke, replied Lin Mu. Lin Mu sheathed the sword and tied it to his waist. With the light weight and short length of the sword, it was easy for Lin Mu to carry it on his waist. Having completed the transaction, Lin Mu took the sack and pouches before walking out of the shop and headed towards an area where he could buy some sets of clothes and more food ingredients, since he had more money now. After Lin Mu had left the dusty old shop, the old man was still standing there, lost in his thoughts, when the woman named Duan Ke spoke. Grandfather, why did you give your old sword to that boy? And you even did a proper appraisal for him, using the testing swords. Duan Ke seemed to have a little confusion and worry in her eyes as she asked Jingwei. The old man stayed silent for a while, during which Duan Ke waited patiently. After an incense stick's worth of time, Jingwei let out a sigh before answering. You said that the boy was not carrying any coins on him when he came in, yet he was able to produce them when you questioned him. I would have taken it as you being mistaken, but I could not sense it either. Duan Ke was shocked upon hearing this. Even though her grandfather's cultivation base was sealed, his senses were not something to be taken lightly. Seeing Duan Ke's shock, Jingwei continued. The boy was also able to withstand a wisp of my aura without fainting. At first, I only intended to probe him a bit and was going to withdraw the moment I felt the boy was unable to bear it, yet against all odds he withstood it, and somehow his strength even increased. The baffled Duan Ke then asked. But grandfather, that still won't be enough for you to sell your old sword, which you used during your youth, for so cheap. The old man smiled a little upon hearing his granddaughter's words before speaking again. It has been more than a decade since I sealed my cultivation base, yet my sword intent still leaked out. Commoners should not be able to sense it, only cultivators can. The woman was a little taken aback, but her confusion was not resolved. Yes, grandfather, the boy was unaffected by it. He did not show any response when your sword intent was leaked. No, the boy not only sensed my sword intent, but he was also able to see its appearance as well. He wisely chose to pretend that nothing happened, but I know he saw it. His heart betrayed his facade. As for how that boy was able to pull the coins out of nothing, I don't know either. He does not have a spatial storage ring, or any other spatial storage treasure on him either. Duan-K was completely lost for words this time and did not know what to think of it. Seeing that his beloved granddaughter was lost in her thoughts, Jingwei turned around to go back to rest but stopped in the doorway and spoke. Keep an eye on that boy K-er. The one thing I'm sure of is that the boy has secrets, and we don't know if there is someone secretly backing him either. The old man left after saying these words to Duan-K, who snapped out of her thoughts after hearing them. Lin Mu had just walked into a clothes shop, completely unaware of the shocking conversation between a pair of grandfather and granddaughter. Lin Mu also did not know that neither Jingwei nor Duan-K were unable to see the mysterious ring on his hand. Lin Mu was thinking of all the events that happened in the shop and the phenomena that he experienced there. First, the gaze of the old man which made him suffocate, and then the appearance of the sword-wielding giant were all completely unimaginable to him. I seem to be experiencing one shocking thing after another ever since I found the mysterious ring, and they only seem to be getting worse, thought Lin Mu inwardly. The old man was not simple. He was surely a cultivator and way stronger than the ones I've seen before. By the time Lin Mu finished his thoughts, he found himself on the street where a lot of clothes shops were located. He randomly chose and entered one of them, seeing a few people in the shop, but not overly crowded. A clerk soon spotted him and asked what he was looking for. Lin Mu only asked for 4 sets of clothes that were durable but did not mention anything specific. Chapter 18, 4 Vessels Restoration Pill. Chapter 18, 4 Vessels Restoration Pill. The clerk went to get the clothes for Lin Mu and returned after 5 minutes. He brought with him 10 sets of clothes, all in different colors and patterns. The clerk then placed them in front of Lin Mu and asked him to choose. Lin Mu picked 2 different sets of black clothes, a gray set of clothes, and one flawless white robe that he particularly liked. He then paid the clerk 10 silver coins for the clothes before putting them in the sack. Lin Mu had now spent more than half of the coins he got from selling the snow-veiled hair and was left with 30 silver coins. The next thing he wanted to get was more cooking ingredients. He went to the same shop as before and bought more rice, oil, spices, and condiments that he could not before, spending 3 silver coins in the process. Lin Mu decided to get some lunch before heading back to the shack. He went to the street with all the restaurants and food stalls. While on his way, he saw some commotion happening in the middle of the road. Coming closer to check what was happening, he saw a carriage approaching the site, out of which a few mercenaries came out. He recognized them by the symbol on their armors, the Crimson Fang mercenaries he had met before. As the crowd parted to let the mercenaries approach, Lin Mu could finally see what the commotion was about. He saw a mercenary that was heavily injured and was being carried by 3 other mercenaries who also had injuries. The heavily injured mercenary's leg was shredded, and pieces of shattered bone could be seen sticking out of it. The gruesome sight of which made Lin Mu's stomach churn. He then saw the mercenaries put the injured men into the carriage, probably to be taken away for treatment. The crowd soon dispersed after the carriage went away. Putting this matter to the back of his mind, Lin Mu continued walking and reached the food street whilst somehow maintaining an appetite. He chose a restaurant which was popular for its noodles and went inside. Lin Mu saw that it was rather crowded and most of the customers seemed to be other mercenaries that had come to the town today. He found an empty seat and sat down to order a bowl of noodles. While he was waiting for his food to arrive, he listened to the mercenaries talk. "Did you all see the commotion out in the street?" said a mercenary sitting on the table beside Lin Mu. "Yeah, a team from the Crimson Fang mercenaries got injured in the forest. Apparently they got attacked by a spirit beast," said another mercenary sitting at the same table. "Do they know what kind of spirit beast attacked them?" asked the first mercenary. They could not tell exactly what type of spirit beast it was, except that it was a large bear. They were ambushed by the bear and spent all their efforts in trying to escape. Still, one of them ended up heavily injured. answered the second mercenary. It's a shame that the mercenary who got heavily injured will be permanently crippled. His leg is as good as gone now, said the first mercenary with a sigh. He could still be healed, but the price for that will be incredibly high. Only an alchemical pill will be able to save his leg now, another mercenary continued who was listening to the conversation. The two mercenaries turned to the man who spoke and asked, "What kind of alchemical pill can heal him? Don't the healing alchemical pills only work on chi cultivators?" That mercenary was not a cultivator. No, there are some higher-ranked alchemical pills that are effective on common people as well. The most common pill would be the Four Vessels Restoration Pill. It is easily recognized by its strong herbal aroma and the spiral patterns present on it, answered the third mercenary. Upon hearing the mercenary's answer, Lin Mu's ears perked up and his eyes focused on him. The mercenary continued speaking. Though getting the Four Vessels Restoration Pill would be next to impossible, even for the leader of the Crimson Fang mercenaries. The only place you can get it from in this region would be from the Tricauldron Peony sect, and I can't even tell what it would cost. For us commoners, it is a priceless pill. The two mercenaries were listening with great interest, as it was the first time they've heard of such information. Desiring to know more, Lin Mu built up his courage and asked, "What cultivation levels does this pill work on, and what kind of injuries can it heal?" The third mercenary turned to look at Lin Mu, then answered, "From what I've heard, it works on all cultivation levels up to the peak of the core condensation realm. That's why it's said to be so incredibly expensive. As for what kind of injuries it can heal, as long as no vital organ is destroyed, it can heal all physical injuries and even reattach severed limbs." Lin Mu was shocked upon hearing the mercenary's answer. If what this mercenary's saying is true, then this is incredible. The three pills I found in the spatial rift should be the Four Vessels Restoration Pill, thought Lin Mu inwardly. A bowl of noodles soon arrived after the conversation ended. Lin Mu ate the delicious noodles and then paid for it before leaving the restaurant. Today was a great day for Lin Mu, as he was even able to find out what the use of the alchemical pills was in addition to buying his first sword. An hour later he reached the hunting shack. Lin Mu had already stored the extra sets of clothes and all other items in the ring after he had gotten out of the town. He then went to check the traps for any beast that may have been caught in it. But this time his luck was not as good and all the traps were empty, thus he returned with nothing. Upon reaching the shack, Lin Mu felt the mysterious ring buzz and got ready for the spatial rift that was about to open. This time, he was looking forward to the opening of the spatial rift after finding out about the Four Vessels Restoration Pills. He was excited about what other valuable treasures he could find there. The spatial rift opened in front of Lin Mu, and it pulled in his hand. He spent a minute trying to find something in it until he touched something that seemed like a broken piece of wood. Pulling his hand out of the rift, Lin Mu then withdrew the item from the ring. He was a little puzzled upon seeing the item in his hand. "What is this, a broken part of a wooden fence?" thought Lin Mu. The item in Lin Mu's hand looked to be a part of a wooden fence, about half the length of his hand. It did not look like anything special after he scanned it over, so he put it back in the ring. He then unsheathed the short sword to practice with it. Lin Mu tried to mimic the exercises he had once seen the guards do. He practiced various attacking methods such as slashing, cutting, chopping, stabbing, and poking with the short sword. His movements were awkward, but he kept on doing it till he was dead tired and his arms felt sore. It reminded him of how he ran today and how the Calming Heart Sutra helped reduce his fatigue. He suddenly remembered the imposing gaze of Jingwei, and how a stream of energy had spread from the ring along with the thunderous chants in his mind which reduced the pressure from the old man's gaze. He recalled the thunderous chants and felt like they were the same as the Calming Heart Sutra, yet different somehow. After he was done practicing with the sword, Lin Mu sat down cross-legged and chanted the Calming Heart Sutra. The vital energy within his muscles intensified in waves, rising and falling in a harmony. Suddenly, He felt the vital energy overflowing into his skin. Every inch of his skin erupted with pain at that moment, and then he felt it all fade away. Lin Mu opened his eyes after he felt the changes in his body. He had successfully broken through to the 5th stage of the body tempering realm and was now considered to be a mid-stage body tempering expert. The body tempering realm could be roughly divided into 4 parts. The early stage was composed of the 1st to 4th stage of the body tempering realm, and in it, a person would temper his muscles and toughen them. The mid-stage was composed of the 5th to 7th stage of the body tempering realm, where one would temper their skin, increasing its resistance. The late stage was composed of the 8th to 10th stage of the body tempering realm, and a person would temper their blood vessels. It was also the stage where a person could start to cultivate qi, as it was only now that their body was tough enough to handle it. The peak stage was composed of the 11th to 13th stage of the body tempering realm, and in it, one would refine their bones and marrow. It was very rare for any person to reach this stage, as it was considered incredibly difficult. No one would attempt to train their body this far along, as they could just become a qi cultivator before this stage and would be much stronger than any expert at this stage. Most of the core disciples of top sects would only train up to the 10th stage of the body tempering realm, as even the best cultivation techniques only had a maximum requirement of the 10th stage. Chapter 19, Danger and Harvest. Chapter 19, Danger and Harvest. Lin Mu stood up and stretched his limbs, followed from which a series of cracks and pops could be heard from his body. The first thing Lin Mu felt different was now that he had broken through to the 5th stage of the body tempering realm, he did not feel as cold as before. With his skin's resistance increased, Lin Mu would be able to withstand the harsh climate with much greater ease. I'm one more step closer to becoming a qi cultivator. Now I just have to keep up this pace and not falter, Lin Mu declared firmly. He then entered the hunting shack to cook some food. Now that he had plenty of condiments, the only things he lacked were vegetables and meat. Lin Mu just hoped that he would be able to hunt a beast tomorrow. After eating dinner, Lin Mu lied down on the makeshift bed and slipped into a deep sleep. He found himself in the same black space as before and just waited for his body to wake up naturally. Lin Mu woke up in the morning feeling refreshed and rejuvenated. He went to the stream to bathe, after which he washed the clothes he was wearing and then wore a new black set of clothes. He then entered the forest to check the traps. Lin Mu checked all the traps and could only find one snare that had caught a black-horned rabbit, which he took and went back to skin and prepared for his breakfast. He roasted the rabbit and applied plenty of spices and condiments, which made his meal much more enjoyable. After his stomach was filled, Lin Mu felt like he had the energy to last the entire day now. As today would be the first time he would be hunting in the forest, Lin Mu felt both excited and agitated. He entered the forest and chose a different path than before this time. This path headed towards the north into the deeper parts of the forest, where stronger and larger beasts lived. Lin Mu still felt a little nervous, so he tried to make as little noise as possible, to not alert any of the beasts. Lin Mu had walked for an hour, during which he had seen many beasts, most of them being smaller beasts like the thorn-tailed rats, with others being larger herbivores such as the stone-hoofed deer, which he would not be able to chase after. He thought he was a little lucky that he did not encounter any larger carnivorous beasts. He was searching for a suitable prey that he could kill, without putting himself in much danger. Another hour later, he found a beast that he could hunt. It was a hook-winged swan that had caught his attention. It seemed like it was separated from its flock and was currently pecking at worms and bugs in the grass. Lin Mu approached the beast silently. Even though the beast was not that strong, being roughly around the 3rd stage of the body tempering stage, if it chose to fly away, Lin Mu would not be able to do much. He sneaked behind the beast with his short sword drawn and approached it. But just as he was about to slash at the beast, a bush behind Lin Mu rustled, alarming the beast. The hook-winged swan cried in surprise and unfurled its wings to take flight upon spotting Lin Mu behind it. Seeing that his prey was about to escape, Lin Mu shot forward with startling speed and stabbed the beast in the base of its neck. The beast screeched in pain and struggled as its life drained from its body. Taking a deep breath, Lin Mu came to his senses, as his instincts completely controlled the entire process that happened before. Lin Mu quickly stored the carcass of the hook-winged swan in the ring and turned around to check the bush where the sound came from. He knew that it was absolutely necessary to be aware of one's surroundings when they were hunting. One wrong step and they could be injured, or worse, killed. But before Lin Mu could even start moving towards the bush, he heard a loud squeal coming from it, finding a large boar charging out of it. The boar was tall enough to reach up to his waist and seemed extremely angry with its eyes crimson red. It was a mid-tiered beast called the red-snouted boar. Its snout was red as one could tell from its name, and they were highly territorial, even attacking beasts much larger than them without blinking an eye. Adrenaline surged through Lin Mu's blood as he broke into a sprint, running away from the boar that was now chasing him. He knew that the red-snouted boar was much stronger and faster than him, so he had to find a way to get rid of it quickly. He kept on running, but the red-snouted boar only got closer, and just when the beast was about to ram him, Lin Mu jumped and grasped a low-hanging branch to pull himself up on a short tree. The boar rammed into the trunk of the tree with a loud thud, making the entire tree shake. Seeing that its enemy had escaped onto the tree, the red-snouted boar kept on ramming it, trying to break it down. Chips of wood flew every time the boar rammed into the tree with its tusks, digging deeper and deeper. Cold sweat appeared on Lin Mu's forehead because of the fear from the boar. His brain functioned at a lightning speed to find a solution to the current predicament, as it did not seem like the tree could stand much longer. Thinking quickly, Lin Mu promptly decided upon a plan. I only have one chance, so let's just hope this works, or my cultivation journey would end before it could even begin. Lin Mu thought out loud. He stretched out his right hand over the edge and timed when the red-snouted beast would slam into the tree. Just when the beast was about to slam into the half-broken tree, Lin Mu willed it and a large rock appeared in his hand. It was the same rock he had found in the spatial rift. Lin Mu pulled his hand away as soon as the large rock appeared, as he could not bear its weight, for the rock easily weighed more than a few hundred kilograms. As soon as he moved his hand, a sickening crunch could be heard since the rock crushed the skull of the red-snouted boar. The beast did not scream, nor struggle, as its life was ended in an instant. Lin Mu waited for a minute to ensure that the beast was dead and would not miraculously come back to life the next moment. He then climbed down to check the aftermath. Blood and brains could be seen splattered around the head of the beast, giving off a bloody stench. Lin Mu finally calmed down after checking the dead beast, and his adrenaline rush faded. He placed his hand on the large rock to store it back in the ring. I could not identify what kind of rock it is, but at least I found a practical use for it, thought Lin Mu with a chuckle. After the large rock was stored into the ring, Lin Mu could see the state of the red-snouted boar. Its head was barely recognizable, having been crushed, with only its hard tusks surviving the impact. Lin Mu stored the carcass of the beast into the ring and ran in another direction, as other beasts would soon be attracted because of the fresh scent of blood. He did not want another dangerous encounter and felt like he had enough adventure for one day. Lin Mu reached the hunting shack 3 hours later. He then went towards the stream to skin the carcasses. Now that he had a blade to skin and gut the beasts, things would be much easier for him. Lin Mu first took out the carcass of the hook-winged swan and started removing the feathers while being careful of the small hooks located at the tips of the feathers. He removed all the feathers and stored them in the ring, as they could be used to make fletching. He would be able to sell them, along with the pelt and tusks of the red-snouted boar, in the town. The next thing he did was to slit the throat of the boar to drain the blood. It was a little difficult for Lin Mu to lift the beast as it weighed over 100 kilograms. While the blood drained from the boar, he cut off the head of the hook-winged swan and let its blood drain as well. After its blood was drained, he slit the belly and removed all the guts, keeping the heart and liver behind. He then washed and stored the carcass into the ring. He did the same for the red-snouted boar too, except that he only threw away the stomach and intestines, keeping the large organs. Lin Mu felt a little tired after completing the task and wanted to rest. Now that he had the red snouted boar's carcass, its vital energy-rich meat would last him for at least a week. He went to the shack to cook the hook-winged swan's meat first, which he flavored with spices. He rested while the meat was roasting. Lin Mu then gorged on the roasted swan beast and felt a warmth spreading from his stomach. This warmth was the vital energy stored in the beast's flesh. He did not feel this before from the black-horned rabbit, as its flesh had very little vital energy stored in it. After finishing his meal, he went outside to continue training his body and to practice with the sword. Chapter 20, A New Martial Technique. Chapter 20, A New Martial Technique. Lin Mu started with physical training first. He ran a few laps, did push ups, sit ups, and then practiced his punches while being in the horse stance. In the end, he practiced using the sword, following the methods which he had seen the guards use. Lin Mu trained for over 3 hours, after which he felt utterly tired and drained. He hurriedly sat down and chanted the calming heart sutra, after which he felt the calming waves spread over his body. This time he could feel the waves of energy not only in his muscles, but also on his skin. The waves increased until they reached a crescendo and then faded, only to repeat once again. After each repetition, he could feel the vital energy from the meat he had eaten being assimilated. This lasted for over 30 minutes, after which all the vital energy he had obtained from eating the beast's meat had been completely absorbed. Lin Mu stopped after this as he felt like he was starving. He went inside and put some rice in the pot to cook, while he cut off a slab of meat from the carcass of the boar. He rubbed spices into the fatty meat and skewered it on some sticks, waiting for the rice to cook so that he could place it on the stove. I should make a larger stove to cook outside. I don't want to wait every time I'm hungry, thought Lin Mu. While waiting, he was adding wood to fuel the stove. He looked to the side and saw that his supply of wood was about to end. I'll need to get more wood tomorrow. Though it would be better if I had an axe, I can still chop some thinner trees with my sword as well. I'll just take it as more sword practice, Lin Mu thought. Soon enough the rice was cooked and Lin Mu could let the meat roast. The aroma of the rich and fatty meat made his mouth water and his stomach rumble with desire. After a brief wait, Lin Mu ravenously ate his dinner, by the end of which his mouth and fingers were covered in the oil from the meat. The more Lin Mu trained, the more he could feel his appetite increasing. In fact, the amount of food he ate in this one meal was double the amount he ate a week ago. Lin Mu felt a little surprised at this realization and wondered how much he would be able to eat once he became a chi cultivator. He did not know much about the habits or life of cultivators, except that they were much stronger than commoners and had a longer lifespan. An ordinary cultivator of the chi refining realm could live for 200 years, while few commoners could survive past 100 years. Lin Mu did not even know how long cultivators of higher cultivation could live, but from what the legends say they can become immortals and live forever. After his meal, Lin Mu could once again feel the comfortable warmth spreading from his stomach, restoring his energy. He once again sat down to chant the calming heart sutra until the vital energy from the meat was completely absorbed. Lin Mu felt that this time he could only absorb about half of the total energy from the meat, with the rest still remaining in his body. I guess without training, the effects of the calming heart sutra are not as good. But even so, the energy I absorbed now was already more than I obtained from the entire hook-winged swan. The amount of vital energy in a mid-tiered beast is simply incomparable to low-tiered beasts, thought Lin Mu as he understood the correct method of training. The sun had set a while ago and it was dark now. Even the crescent moon could not be seen, as it was hidden behind the clouds. Lin Mu looked up at the pitch-black sky and pondered on some random thoughts. He used to enjoy gazing at the night sky ever since he was a child, but these days he just seemed to not have enough time to do it anymore. As he was gazing upwards, Lin Mu felt the mysterious ring buzz. It is late this time. I wonder how the ring works. Does it just randomly open the spatial rifts, or is there a pattern to it? Lin Mu questioned himself. He had already extended his hand in anticipation of the spatial rift. But this time he felt an even greater force pulling his hand than when the rift opened for the first time. He was pulled towards the forest for over 600 meters, after which he finally came to a halt. Damn, this is bad. I better keep all my senses alert for any danger. Lin Mu cursed as he unsheathed the sword with his left hand. Soon enough a spatial rift opened in front of him, and his hand was sucked in. Lin Mu frantically checked inside the rift to try to find whatever was in there so that he can get away from the forest as fast as possible. Fortunately, nothing dangerous occurred, and he was able to find the item that was in the spatial rift 5 minutes later. As soon as the object was stored in the ring, Lin Mu ran out of the forest at the fastest speed he could muster. After reaching the shack, he finally withdrew the item from the ring. The item that he had obtained this time was a small booklet that was torn and damaged, with most of its pages missing. Lin Mu opened the booklet and read its contents. The more Lin Mu read, the more excited he felt. This is a martial technique!" exclaimed Lin Mu. The booklet described a martial technique called the boulder collapsing fist. It was a fist technique that was supposed to have immense force. Though the thing that caught Lin Mu's notice first was the requirements mentioned in the booklet. It said, "No minimum cultivation required, can be practiced by persons of any level." This meant that he would be able to learn and use this martial technique and would not need to wait until he became a cultivator. Though a major part of the booklet was missing, the introduction and the mnemonics for learning the martial technique were completely present. The martial technique was composed of a breathing technique and a physical training method, both of which had to be used together to master it. The martial technique described creating a clockwise spiral current of energy in the left hand and an anti-clockwise spiral of energy in the right hand. There was an incomplete page describing the latter parts of the technique as well. But it was only vaguely instructed to increase the number of energy spirals, not enough to fully understand it. Lin Mu could only wonder how many pages the booklet could have had, and how many parts of the technique it was missing. The introduction did say that the might of the technique increases exponentially with each higher stage of the technique. If Lin Mu could learn the technique, he would not have to fear other experts of the body tempering realm as much and would be able to have a fighting chance against them. Lin Mu read the booklet over and over again in an effort to memorize it. He spent a long time trying to memorize it until he eventually fell asleep. He appeared in the dark place again, but this time he had a purpose. He went over the parts that he had memorized in an effort to increase his understanding. Lin Mu had memorized about half of the breathing technique that was mentioned, while the physical training method he could not. He woke up in the morning and felt like he had completely understood the part he had already memorized. Lin Mu went to the forest to chop some firewood and also to gather some tinder. He found some dried and dead trees that were thin and then used his short sword to chop them down. At first, it took him multiple slashes to cut the trees, but after cutting 10 he got the gist of it and could then cut them in 2 slashes. He checked the edge of the short sword later and found it to be as sharp as ever, with no flaw in it whatsoever. It is indeed an excellent sword made by a master craftsman, thought Lin Mu. Lin Mu then carried the wood over to the hunting shack and put it in a small shed attached to the side of the shack. He set some more meat to cook on the stove while he carried over some large stones to make a bigger stove outside the shack. By the time he was done with the stove, the meat was already cooked and ready for him to eat. Chapter 21, Hunting and Training. Chapter 21, Hunting and Training. Lin Mu ate the roasted meat for his breakfast and became energized, ready to tackle the day's tasks. Lin Mu then went to check the traps as routine, but once again nothing was caught in the traps, neither were they triggered. Seems like the number of beasts in the outskirts has finally started to decrease. It means winter is close now. I got to hunt more beasts and save up some money, thought Lin Mu. The merchants would be arriving in the town the day after tomorrow, so Lin Mu wanted to accumulate as many pelts as he could till then. Lin Mu entered the deeper part of the forest after walking for an hour. He searched for beasts while keeping an eye out for danger. The first prey that Lin Mu found was a two-tailed wood lizard, which was sunbathing on a rock. Lin Mu was able to kill it with ease as it was a low-tiered beast and was slower than Lin Mu. Two-tailed lizards were dark green in color and had two tails. While they were slow, their defense was good because of their tough scales. But Lin Mu had no problem penetrating its defense due to his excellent short sword. Lin Mu stabbed it behind its neck and the beast was dead in seconds. Lin Mu stored the corpse in the ring and continued his hunt. Soon after he found a thorn-tailed rat which nearly scratched him with its tail. He killed it and stored it in the ring. It took him another hour to find the next prey. This time it was a red-crowned heron. There was a flock of red-crowned herons at the edge of a pond. In order to not alert the entire flock, Lin Mu baited one of the red-crowned herons with the flesh from the thorn-tailed rat. He hid on the top of a tree while the beast came to eat the bait. Lin Mu jumped down with his sword drawn, and slashed at the neck of the beast, severing its head in one stroke. Storing the corpse in the ring, Lin Mu waited to see if he could get another red-crowned heron with the same method, but alas, the flock was scared away by a beast's roar that came from deeper in the forest. The roar even surprised Lin Mu, as he had not heard such a loud roar before. He wondered what beast could roar like that. The roar had more impact on the beasts than he thought. He could not find any more beast after that as they all hid or retreated further away, after being scared by the roar. Seeing that he was not going to have luck hunting, Lin Mu went back to the hunting shack. On the way back he heard the roar once again, this time it was fainter, but it had the same effect nonetheless. He could see birds flying away overhead. I hope the roar of that beast does not keep on scaring away the beasts or I would not be able to hunt, thought Lin Mu. Lin Mu went to the stream to skin and prepare the beasts. He stored the feathers of the red-crowned heron and the skin of the two-tailed wood lizard. It took a little effort for him to skin the two-tailed wood lizard because of the hard scales, but he was successful in the end. Done with this task, Lin Mu was prepared to train. He followed his previous routine of training and then sat down to chant the calming Heart Sutra. He felt the vital energy that was still stored in his body being assimilated. Lin Mu could feel his skin tingle as the energy waves spread through it. After all the energy was assimilated, Lin Mu looked up at the sun and estimated that it was probably 2 p.m. He removed the carcass of the two-tailed wood lizard to cook on the bigger stove he had made outside the shack. He then cooked a pot of rice on the other stove. While his lunch was cooking, Lin Mu took the booklet out of the ring and continued memorizing it. Lin Mu wanted to memorize the physical training method of boulder collapsing fist first so that he could practice it today. He was able to memorize the stances and the fist routines by the time lunch was cooked. Lin Mu ate his lunch with gusto while going over the contents of the booklet in his mind. After he was done eating lunch, Lin Mu stood up to practice the physical training method of the boulder collapsing fist. The training method comprised various stances in which the practitioner had to perform the fist routines. Lin Mu practiced it all way until it was dark. He was sweaty and tired, so he went to the stream to take a bath and also wash the robes he was currently wearing. The water of the stream was chilly, but it soothed Lin Mu's sore muscles. After taking a bath, he changed into a new set of clothes and went back to the hunting shack to cook dinner. He took out the carcass of the red-snouted boar and cut a leg from it. He then spit-roasted it on the bigger stove outside. Not to waste time, he continued reading and memorizing the booklet. While he was engrossed in reading, Lin Mu heard a rustling sound coming from the bushes nearby. He turned to check and saw a small silhouette escaping into the forest as soon as he stood up. He could not find anything there, so just thought it could be a small animal. Soon enough, the leg of the red-snouted beast was completely cooked. He tore a piece of tender meat and dipped it in some soy sauce before eating. Lin Mu could not even imagine himself being able to eat an entire leg of a boar by himself, a few weeks ago, but now here he was with his ever-increasing appetite. Lin Mu laid down on the bed and continued reading the booklet. By now he had memorized the physical training method and only needed to memorize the remaining half of the breathing technique. By the time he fell asleep, Lin Mu had memorized all the contents of the booklet. In the dark place in his sleep, Lin Mu recalled the martial technique, improving his understanding of it. When Lin Mu woke up in the morning, he had memorized and understood the martial technique by heart. Now that I'm done with the booklet, I can finally start to learn it, thought Lin Mu out loud with excitement in his voice. Lin Mu withdrew the carcass of the red-crowned heron from his ring and cut it into small pieces to make stew from it. He put the pieces of meat into the pot and added spices and condiments to flavor it. By the time it cooked, Lin Mu would try out what he had learned from the booklet until now. Lin Mu first started using the breathing technique until he got the rhythm for it, then took the proper stance mentioned in the booklet. Then he started performing the fist routine. He made multiple mistakes while practicing the martial technique. He always mismatched the breathing pattern and the fist technique while he changed stances. He could feel the vital energy within his body being agitated, but it could not find the proper path to flow. It got stuck whenever he messed up the technique. Eventually, with time, he started to make fewer and fewer mistakes. It had been 2 hours since Lin Mu had started practicing the martial technique. He had lost track of time as he immersed himself in training. He only stopped when he smelled the delicious aroma rising from the pot of stew. He then sat down to eat the stew. The meat was extremely tender and separated from bones with ease. Glistening drops of fat covered the meat as he ate it and drank the stew. The warmth spreading from his stomach comforted Lin Mu. After eating, he sat down cross-legged to chant the calming Heart Sutra and obtain the most benefits from the training he did. He felt the effects of the calming Heart Sutra spreading, and by the time all the vital energy was assimilated, Lin Mu felt like he was already near another breakthrough. Practicing with the boulder collapsing fist martial technique seemed to have a greater effect than the method he was using before. Lin Mu decided to use this technique for training from now on. The next task on his list was to go hunting. Lin Mu had not heard any roar ever since yesterday, so he should be able to hunt today with no problem. He took a different path this time and headed more towards the northwestern part of the forest. After 2 hours of walking, he reached a small clearing from where he could hear the cries of 2 different beasts. He approached silently, making sure not to alert the beasts. He climbed a tree and hid at the top to spy on the beasts. Once he got to the top of the tree, he could finally get a clear view of the beasts. They seemed to be in a stare down, thought Lin Mu upon seeing the behavior of the 2 beasts. The first beast was a black panther who had a small tuft of yellow fur on the top of its head, while the other beast was an ape who had light brown fur and arms which were abnormally long compared to its body. Lin Mu did not know the names of these beasts, but they seemed to be very strong mid-tiered beasts. He did not know why, but instead of escaping, Lin Mu's curiosity made him observe the beasts with interest. He wanted to know why these beasts were in conflict, as they did not seem to be competing for territory. Only when the ape beast moved a little did Lin Mu see what was hidden behind him. Upon seeing the object behind the ape, Lin Mu's eyes went wide. Chapter 22, First Battle. Chapter 22, First Battle. What Lin Mu saw behind the ape beast was a plant that was 2 feet tall. It was dark green in color and had 6 leaves on its stalk. There was a purple-colored fruit the size of a grape hanging from it. Lin Mu thought he was hallucinating at first when he saw faint wisps of smoke arising from the fruit. "Wait, that's not smoke, that's spirit chi," spoke Lin Mu out loud, before slamming his mouth shut upon remembering what kind of situation he was in. Thankfully, the beasts did not seem to notice when Lin Mu spoke out loud. The plant that the ape beast was guarding was a spirit herb, and that too, one that had already borne fruit. The conflict between the 2 beasts seemed to be due to the spirit herb. Beasts had their own innate cultivation talent and did not have the need for cultivation techniques to enter the chi refining realm like humans. But beasts could still consume spirit herbs to increase their speed of cultivation. Because of this, whenever a spirit herb or spirit fruit grew in the wild, it was usually fought upon by multiple beasts and sometimes even humans if they discovered it. Lin Mu had seen some spirit herbs and spirit fruits before, but none of such high quality. The spirit apples which grew in the orchards of northern town were of the lowest quality of spirit fruit and still cost 1 gold coin each. Lin Mu could not even imagine how expensive a spirit herb of this quality was worth. At this moment, wild thoughts were running in Lin Mu's mind. He was imagining all methods he could use to snatch the spirit herb and obtain it for his own use. If I can obtain that spirit herb, I'm sure I will enter the Qi refining realm with the help of the Calming Heart Sutra, thought Lin Mu. Lin Mu kept on observing the beasts while formulating plans for obtaining the spirit herb. Currently, the two beasts were growling at each other, trying to intimidate each other. The ape beast seems to have been guarding the spirit herb for some time, while the panther beast seemed to have just discovered it and was coveting it. After a couple of minutes, the panther beast could not take it anymore and made the first move. The panther beast pounced on the ape with its claws drawn. The ape beast howled loudly at the panther's approach and extended his arm to intercept the panther. The panther scratched the ape on the chest while the ape slammed the panther with its long arm on its side, which made the panther retreat. The panther was then circling the ape, looking for the next opportunity to strike. The ape was scratched on its chest and was bleeding from the wound, while the panther seemed to be completely fine after the ape's retaliation. From this, one could assume that the panther was the stronger beast of the two, and the ape seemed to be at a disadvantage. This time the ape lunged forward with its arms stretched up and smashed them together on the back of the panther. A pain-filled cry came out of the panther's mouth, yet it kept its poise and sank its fangs into the knee of the ape. A sickening crunch could be heard as the panther ripped out the kneecap of the ape. The ape wailed in agony as its eyes turned bloodshot with rage. The beast lost all inhibitions and tangled together with the panther in a mindless fight. By the end of the fight, the ape beast had lost an eye, with multiple chunks of flesh ripped from its body, and was unable to move due to its injured knee. The panther beast was also heavily injured, having broken multiple ribs and a foreleg, which it was dragging along now. Both the beasts seemed to be at their last breaths, but the panther was still faring better. The panther was crouching and looking for an opportunity to deliver the final blow. Lin Mu had witnessed the entire battle and was also waiting for an opportunity to strike. Observing that the ape would not be alive for much longer, Lin Mu approached from the blind spot of the panther. The ape was already blinded in one eye and had become weary due to blood loss. The panther saw the ape swaying and made its move. It tackled the ape to the ground and bit down on its throat. It held on tight while the ape was blindly raining blows on the panther. Grasping this opportunity, Lin Mu sprinted forward and reached the panther in a couple of breaths. The panther finally heard Lin Mu approaching and had let go of the ape's throat to get ready for him, but the ape gripped the limbs of the panther like a vice. The panther released a loud roar while trying to break free of the ape's grip. Lin Mu reached the side of the panther and slashed the short sword at its neck, but missed and cut its back instead, as the beast shifted. The panther attacked Lin Mu with its hind limbs, which were free and nearly injured him, but Lin Mu could dodge it by sidestepping. The ape's grip on one forelimb of the panther weakened, and the panther pried it free. Lin Mu slashed again and completely missed as the panther was able to twist and turn to dodge his attack. Noticing that the panther was about to break free, Lin Mu held the short sword with both his hands and jumped at it, ignoring the idea of getting injured. The beast clawed at Lin Mu in response, which missed his torso and grazed his left arm, leaving a shallow cut on it. Lin Mu put all his weight in and stabbed the panther all the way through its chest. Lin Mu then rolled away, escaping another strike of the panther, leaving the short sword stuck in the panther. Seeing that he was successful in stabbing the panther beast, Lin Mu put distance between him and the panther. The panther wailed in anguish but could not do much to remove the sword. Now that the ape was dead and had let go of the panther, it tried dragging itself towards Lin Mu in a final attempt to attack him, but was too weak and collapsed after not even 3 steps. Lin Mu waited for 5 minutes before approaching the panther. He carefully poked the panther with a stick and checked whether it was still alive. Confirming that it was dead, Lin Mu pulled out the short sword from the chest of the beast. A stream of blood then started flowing from the hole in the panther's chest. Lin Mu put the corpse of the panther into the ring and did the same with the corpse of the ape as well. He then approached the spirit herb and plucked the fruit hanging from it. He was about to pull out the stalk from the ground as well when it withered in an instant and turned to dust. This surprised Lin Mu as he was not expecting this to happen. Lin Mu examined the small grape-sized purple fruit in his hand. No wisps of spirit chi could be seen rising from the fruit anymore after it was plucked from the stalk. Lin Mu stored the fruit in the ring and prepared to leave the forest. Lin Mu was lucky enough to not only acquire the fruit of the spirit herb today but was also able to obtain 2 corpses of possibly high-tier beasts. He was lucky that the merchants would be arriving at the town tomorrow and he would be able to sell the corpses along with the box made of fragrant wood. He will definitely be making a lot of money tomorrow, which will hopefully last him the entire winter. When Lin Mu reached the hunting shack 3 hours later, the first thing that came to his mind was to build a sled so that he would be able to carry the beast corpses to town. He could not let anyone see his usage of the ring, thus could only use this method. He chopped down some suitable trees and tied them with some tough vines to form a flat sled. He then wove the vines together and attached them to the ends of a wooden pole he made from a sapling, to make a handle with which he could pull the sled. By the time he was done with all this, it was nighttime. Lin Mu had already set up some meat and rice to cook, so could eat as soon as he finished building the sled. After eating dinner, Lin Mu immersed himself in practicing the boulder collapsing fist. He practiced all the way until midnight when his concentration finally broke, and he sat down to chant the Calming Heart Sutra. With the practice that he did in the morning, Lin Mu already sensed that he was close to a breakthrough and thus was not surprised when he finally did, after assimilating all the vital energy from the meat. He felt his skin tingle and itch when he broke through to the 6th stage of the body tempering stage. He was about to stand up when he felt the ring buzz and lost his balance as a spatial rift appeared right where he was sitting. Oh, F***ck. Cursed Lin Mu as he shifted to the side to prevent himself from falling into the rift. His arm was completely sucked into the spatial rift, leaving him stuck in an awkward position on the ground. If another person was to see Lin Mu in this position, they would probably burst out in laughter. Chapter 23, Shocking the Merchants. Chapter 23, Shocking the Merchants. Lin Mu searched around in the spatial rift, wanting to find whatever was in there so that he could stand up. It took him over 15 minutes, after which he was able to find the item. He pulled his hand out and withdrew the item from the ring. But upon seeing the item, Lin Mu became a little dumbfounded. "Is this just dirt?" said Lin Mu, on seeing the clump of dirt in his hand. Lin Mu touched and smelled the clump of dirt and could not find anything special about it, but still stored it in the ring. He stood up and entered the hunting shack to sleep. As Lin Mu was already tired, he fell into a deep sleep within 2 minutes and entered the dark place. Lin Mu appeared in the dark place and looked around. He felt like it was a little different this time. Somehow the darkness seemed to have reduced a minuscule amount. He still could not see anything, but the darkness did not seem as dark as before. It was hard to explain, but that's what he felt like. Since I appear here every time I sleep, I should probably give this place a name. I'll name this place the Sleepscape, thought Lin Mu, and felt a little proud of his naming sense. Lin Mu then sat down to recall and practice the boulder collapsing fist. He found out that now that he had memorized the entire martial technique, he could practice it here. Even though he could not feel the vital energy within his body, he could still improve his coordination between the fist routine and breathing technique. If I practice here, I'll have twice the gains in half the time, thought Lin Mu as realization dawned on him about the benefits of the sleepscape. Others could only sleep and dream while Lin Mu could enter the sleepscape to practice and still wake up feeling refreshed. Thus Lin Mu continued practicing the technique until he woke up. Upon waking, Lin Mu set some meat on the stove to cook while he practiced the martial technique and see how much he had improved after practicing in the sleepscape. He could see some improvement in his coordination, but his vital energy still had difficulty in finding the right path to flow. As soon as the breakfast was ready, Lin Mu stopped to eat it and then sat down to chant the Calming Heart Sutra. Lin Mu noticed that the rate of assimilation had increased, as before it took him 30 minutes to completely assimilate the vital energy, but now it took him 25 minutes. Looks like my assimilation rate increased after the breakthrough, or it could be that I can assimilate more vital energy than before, perhaps. I'll have to test it out after coming back from the town, thought Lin Mu. Lin Mu stored the sled he had made into the ring, as he would be walking most of the way to the town, and only when he is close enough will he use the sled to pull the corpses. He also withdrew the sack which he slung on his back and a coin pouch that he tied to his waist. Ensuring that everything was ready, Lin Mu set out on the path to the town. It was around 8 a.m. right now, and most of the merchants should be reaching the town by noon. Lin Mu had plenty of time to do all the tasks today. If he is able to get a substantial amount of money, Lin Mu should be able to book a room in an inn for at least a month. Lin Mu was about 1/4 of the way away from the town when he finally saw some people on the path. He then waited for the people to go far enough for him to not be visible. Once there were no people nearby, Lin Mu took out the sled and put the corpses on it. He then started to pull it along, when he suddenly got the idea that he should probably not let the beast corpses be exposed and cover them. The only thing that he had that could somewhat cover the beast corpses was the large sack that he had. So he covered them with the sack, leaving some parts of the corpses exposed but not so much that it would invite the people's interest. While walking he came in contact with some people, but they only paid him a momentary glance before turning away. Lin Mu reached the northern town in 30 minutes, during which he saw some merchant carriages that were also entering the town. The view of the town had completely changed due to the large number of merchants who had set up their stalls and shops everywhere. There were a ton of people browsing and buying the goods the merchants had brought, while some hunters could be seen selling some beast materials to the merchants. Even the peasants working in the spirit apple orchards were given 2 days off, as this would be their only chance in buying whatever goods they needed from the merchants before winter comes. Once winter officially starts, the next time the merchants would be coming to the town would be at the start of spring, next year. The trade route that the merchants followed was to enter the 4 towns and then head towards Wu Lim City, where they would be selling off their most expensive goods and buying the shipments of spirit apples as well as some miscellaneous goods. After completing their trades in the city, they would all exit through the southern town and then head towards the various villages, towns, and cities towards the south. The things which attracted most merchants to Wu Lim City were the spirit apples and the occasional rare spirit beast materials. Lin Mu took the road towards the town square where the bigger merchants set up their shops. He wanted to sell the beast corpses to a merchant who specialized in them. Also, if he wanted to sell the fragrant wood box, he will have to find a merchant who dabbled in luxury goods. He reached the town square 20 minutes later, as there were many people and carriages on the street which he had to carefully wade through. Lin Mu let his sight wander and saw a myriad of people and a cacophony of sounds. There were merchants and shopkeepers shouting out their wares, people bargaining with the merchants, and some people arguing with each other on who spotted the item first and had the right to buy it. One could see people from all walks of life in this square. Some were hunters with sinister appearances, some merchants who had cunning eyes, and of course some naive commoners. Lin Mu's sight eventually stopped on a group of merchants who were surrounded by a large crowd of people. Their carriages were parked behind them, and on the side, one could spot some live beasts in cages as well as beast corpses which were currently being skinned by some men. Lin Mu dragged the sled towards that group of merchants. He bumped into some people and had to also push some people aside so that he could pull the sled in order to reach the merchants. Once he reached the merchants, one of the young men that were skinning the beast corpses spotted him and gestured him to bring his sled there. The young man looked to be in his early 20s and was wearing a tough traveler's robe. "You're here to sell some beast corpses, I presume," asked the young man to Lin Mu. Yes, I have 2 beast corpses that I'm looking to sell, replied Lin Mu. The young man gazed at the sled and said, we're currently only buying larger beasts, so if you have any other smaller beast corpses, I'm afraid you'll have to look elsewhere. Lin Mu nodded to the young man and turned the sled around to show him the beast corpses. But when he lifted the sack and exposed the corpses, the young man's eyes went wide and his jaw fell. This is a long-armed Hamao ape, and that's a yellow-tufted panther, shouted the young man in shock. Hearing the young man's shout, the other merchants and the people standing around also turned their focus towards him and then towards the beast corpses. Surprise could be seen in the eyes of people who knew what those beasts were, and confusion in the eyes of those who didn't. The older merchant who seemed to be the leader of the group approached the sled to check on the beast's corpses. His experienced eyes scanned the corpses and then turned towards Lin Mu. A long-armed Hamao ape corpse at the peak of the mid-tier and a yellow-tufted panther corpse at the high tier. You've been very lucky, boy, spoke the merchant. Lin Mu was a little confused when the young man was shocked, but when he heard the words of the older merchant, he finally understood his reaction. If not for the scenario where the 2 beasts had already heavily injured each other, there was no chance that Lin Mu could hunt them, even escaping from them would be pushing his luck. The other people who were watching were gossiping and muttering amongst themselves. The older merchant, seeing the crowd's condition, gestured towards a burly man that was skinning a beast corpse at the side. That burly man came close and dispersed the crowd. Some people in the crowd were unwilling at first, but then scattered under the threatening eyes of the burly man. Once most of the people dispersed and only the people who were actually trading with the merchants were left, the older merchant spoke. Though the pelts of both the beasts are damaged, I can still pay you for their materials and the meat. Lin Mu nodded as he knew that the pelts were beyond saving and the beast corpses were only worth their materials. Yes, I want to sell these beast corpses, so how much will you pay me for these? Asked Lin Mu. 2 gold coins for the long-armed Hamao ape and 4 gold coins for the yellow-tufted panther, stated the older merchant. This time it was Lin Mu's turn to be shocked. Chapter 24, A Large Transaction. Chapter 24, A Large Transaction. It was true that Lin Mu did not know what those 2 beasts were, and neither did he know how strong they were, but he never expected to get 6 gold coins total for both the beast corpses. Another point Lin Mu understood was that he was in extreme danger the whole time he was in the presence of the beasts. The one thing he did not have to worry about anymore was about affording a room at an inn. With the 6 gold coins he got, he would be able to easily spend the rest of the winter in the inn. A single gold coin is enough to rent a decent inn for an entire month. I was pinning my hopes on the fragrant wood box to get enough money to last the winter, but these 2 corpses are already more than enough, thought Lin Mu. The older merchant was staring at the shocked Lin Mu. Seeing that he was not answering, the merchant questioned. So will you take the offer? Yes, I'll take it, said Lin Mu hurriedly after he snapped out upon hearing the merchant's question. The older merchant asked the young man standing at the side to take the beast corpses away while he took out 6 gold coins and passed them to Lin Mu, who took them with shaky hands. The older merchant smiled a little upon seeing Lin Mu's shaky hands. Lin Mu pretended to put the coins in his pouch, but he actually stored them in the ring. Lin Mu had never handled such a large amount of money, so he wanted to keep it safe, and the safest place would be the ring. Lin Mu was also grateful to the older merchant as he had dispersed the crowd before offering him the money, or an incident such as the one with the snow-veiled hair would have happened again today. Even though Lin Mu was stronger than before, being in the 6th stage of the body tempering realm, he still would not be able to defend himself against multiple people. After completing the transaction, Lin Mu turned around to leave. Now he only needed to find a merchant that would buy the fragrant wood box. Lin Mu browsed around the square until he found a rich merchant who seemed like he would buy the box. The rich merchant was a middle-aged man wearing a long yellow robe and had his hair tucked in a hat. There were many items that were set for sale in the makeshift shop. though most people were only watching them, never actually buying them. There were goods of different types: amulets, pendants, bracelets, earrings, bejeweled daggers and blades, vases, and pots of exquisite quality, along with a multitude of luxuries. Lin Mu approached the shop and looked around. Seeing all the items, he felt like the merchant would probably accept the fragrant wood box. Lin Mu turned his gaze to the merchant, who was sitting and drinking a cup of tea in silence. "Sir Merchant, do you buy things here?" asked Lin Mu respectfully. The merchant, who was engrossed in enjoying his cup of tea, opened his eyes and gazed at Lin Mu. "Depending on the item, I may or may not buy it. But know this, that I only buy high-end or rare items," answered the middle-aged merchant expressionlessly. Lin Mu pulled out the fragrant wood box from the sack, which he had withdrawn from the ring beforehand. He then presented it to the middle-aged merchant. The middle-aged merchant narrowed his eyes upon seeing the fragrant wood box. "A fragrant agar wood box, and what's this?" the middle-aged merchant muttered as he saw the pattern engraved on the box. The merchant seemed to have identified the pattern on the box, as his interest in the box rose. "How did you get this pill storage box from the Tricauldron Peony sect?" asked the merchant. Lin Mu was a little surprised, as the merchant was able to guess the use of the box with just one look. He also confirmed his suspicion that this box and the 4 vessels restoration pills were indeed from the Tricauldron Peony section. "A man pawned it off to my father in exchange for some money," answered Lin Mu. He had long thought of what excuse he was going to give, in case anyone asked. The middle-aged merchant had a slightly confused look upon hearing Lin Mu, but then had a change of expression, as if he had some kind of realization. "Ah, you must have gotten it after last year's plague. Of course, the Tricauldron Peony sect were the ones who supplied the cure for it," said the merchant with an affirming tone. This was news to Lin Mu. He did not know that the Tricauldron Peony sect supplied the medicine for curing the plague. The plague that spread last year was devastating for the northern and the eastern town. Around 30% of the population of both towns died due to it. It was not until a month later, after it started to spread, that the mayor of Wulim City requested the sect for help. The medicine arrived 2 days later, but it was already late for Lin Mu's parents, as they had long succumbed to the disease. Lin Mu pushed his thoughts aside for now and spoke. "Will you buy this box then?" "Let me test it first," said the merchant as he took the box from Lin Mu's hands. The merchant tapped his finger on top of the pattern, and suddenly it lit up. Various runes appeared floating on the engraved pattern. Lin Mu's eyes went wide as he saw the sight. The merchant noticed Lin Mu's shock as he said, "It seems you did not know that it had a preservation formation placed on it." Lin Mu nodded in affirmation to the merchant's words. "Of course you are not a cultivator, so there was no way you could know," said the merchant to himself. "Wait, that means you are a cultivator?" asked Lin Mu curiously. "Yes, I am a cultivator indeed," the middle-aged merchant answered. The merchant then switched his gaze towards the box and stayed silent as if in thought. He had his hand under his chin as he spoke. "It's a fragrant agarwood pill storage box from the Tricauldron Peony sect with a preservation formation placed on it. So for it, I'll give you a price of, 100 gold coins." Lin Mu was too shocked to even express it. He even secretly pinched himself to ensure that he was not in a dream. Heaven knows that he has not had a dream for a few days now. He could have just started to daydream without even realizing it. Lin Mu was not the only person who was shocked upon hearing the price. While there was no one else at the shop, there were 2 men standing a little farther from him that also heard it. The 2 men were standing with their backs to Lin Mu. They did not turn around to look right away, instead they walked a little farther from the shop and then turned around to look. The day had been going amazing for Lin Mu. He already felt lucky upon getting 6 gold coins for the 2 beast corpses, but now that he was getting a 100 gold coins in exchange for the fragrant wood box, he was on top of the world. Understanding Lin Mu's acceptance, The middle-aged merchant turned his left palm up and a small pouch appeared on it out of thin air. Lin Mu looked closer at the merchant's hand, and indeed there was a ring on the middle finger of the merchant. The merchant was also wearing a spatial storage ring. It was the first spatial storage ring he had seen, except for the one that he had. The ring that the merchant was wearing was vastly different from Lin Mu's. While Lin Mu's ring was a dull gray with 5 small protrusions on it, the merchant's was golden with a small blue gemstone embedded in it. After the small pouch appeared in the merchant's palm, he opened it and counted 100 gold coins before putting them on the counter. Lin Mu hastily picked them up and stored them in his own coin pouch. He could not store them in the ring right away as the amount was too much to hide, and also the merchant in front of him was a cultivator, who could notice it. While this all happened, the two men were closely watching the entire transaction. Greed could be seen igniting in the eyes of both men. The men seemed to have said something to each other before they disappeared in the crowd of people. While Lin Mu had wanted to prevent a similar situation as before, by hiding and being as secretive as he could be with the transactions, the thing that he feared still happened, and right now he did not even know that he was in danger. Done with the transaction, Lin Mu walked away from the merchant and went towards the deserted alley where Jingwei's emporium was located, as he still had other items he wanted to sell. While he was walking, he was completely unaware that two men were following him from afar. Chapter 25, Finding an Inn. Chapter 25, Finding an Inn. Lin Mu was standing in front of Jingwei's emporium, staring at the shop. Before entering, he withdrew all the materials he was going to sell, as well as withdrawing a sufficient amount of money to be kept in the coin pouch. He currently had 4 materials he wanted to sell. They were the pelt and tusks of the red-snouted boar, the pelt of the 2-tailed wood lizard, and the feathers of the hook-winged swan. The gains from these materials would not compare to the number of coins he received from today's previous trades, but it will net him some silvers at least. Because for Lin Mu every little copper counted. Once Lin Mu ensured that everything was ready, he took a deep breath and pushed open the door of the shop. The door was still hard to push and creaked loudly when it swung open. The shop was still the same as he had left it before, with the only exception being that the counter was clean from dust and the woman, Du-En-K, was already at the counter. Du-En-K was sitting at the counter while reading a book. She was wearing a light green dress today and her hair was tied in a bun with the help of an ornate hairpin in the shape of a poplar leaf. Du-En-K turned her sight away from the book and looked towards Lin Mu, who had just walked in. But as she looked at him closely, she felt that he looked different from before. Only when he came in front of her, could she perceive the reason. He broke through to the 6th stage of the body tempering already? It has not even been a week since he was in the 4th stage of the body tempering realm. Thought Du-En-K with a little surprise on her face. Lin Mu was thinking about what he was going to say to Du-En-K, so did not notice the slight surprise on her face. He stood in front of her and spoke in a friendly tone. "I'm here to sell more materials. Show me what you've brought," said Du-En-K curtly. Lin Mu opened the sack and pulled out the materials one by one. He first placed the bundle of feathers from the hook-winged swan on one side, along with the tusks of the red-snouted boar. Then took out the rolled-up pelts of the red-snouted boar and the 2-tailed wood lizard. Du-En-K unrolled the pelts and inspected them. Finding nothing wrong with them, she placed them down and then inspected the tusks for cracks and counted the number of feathers. After she was done inspecting all the materials, Du-En-K turned her eyes towards Lin Mu and spoke. "I'll pay you 1 silver for the 2-tailed wood lizard's pelt, 5 silvers for the red-snouted boar's pelt, 2 silvers and 50 coppers for the feathers of the hook-winged swan and 2 silvers for the tusks of the red-snouted boar." "That's fine for me, I accept," said Lin Mu. "Do you want to buy something?" asked Du-En-K with a questioning tone, as if she was displeased with Lin Mu for only selling and not buying anything. "Nothing right now," said Lin Mu, oblivious to her tone. Seeing that Lin Mu was not looking to buy anything, Du-N-K took out a coin pouch from the counter and counted 10 silver and 50 copper coins before passing them to Lin Mu, who took them. Lin Mu was about to turn around when Du-N-K spoke. "How's the sword treating you?" Lin Mu stopped upon hearing her and spoke. "The sword is excellent and has been a great help to me. It did not become even slightly dull after I chopped some trees with it," said Lin Mu with an impressed tone. The corner of Du-N-K's mouth could be seen twitching after hearing that Lin Mu used the short sword to chop wood. If grandfather was here, he would definitely teach him a lesson. Using his sword to chop wood, what disrespect, thought Du-N-K. You should buy an actual axe to chop wood then. It's not right to use the sword for that, suggested Du-N-K. Also, perhaps for skinning the pelts, you should also get a proper skinning knife. It would make the task much more efficient. Further spoke Du-N-K after seeing that Lin Mu was contemplating on her previous suggestion. Lin Mu thought of Du-N-K's suggestions and indeed felt that he should get a chopping axe and a skinning knife. If not for their intended use as tools, they could be used as extra weapons in case of an emergency. "You're right, I'll get them both. Can you show me some?" asked Lin Mu. Du-N-K nodded and came out from behind the counter and went towards a shelf towards the right. She checked the top of the shelf and pulled out a short knife that was kept in a leather sheath. The knife was 10 centimeters long and had a curved blade. After taking out the knife, she went towards the other corner of the shelf and picked up an axe that was hung on its side. The axe looked very common and unassuming. She brought both items to the counter and showed them to Lin Mu, who checked them out. Finding them acceptable, he spoke. "How much for them?" "A total of 5 silver coins, 2 for the axe, and 3 for the skinning knife," said Du-N-K. Lin Mu was a little surprised that the knife cost more than the axe, but then understood that the knife was of a much higher quality than the axe. Lin Mu took out 5 silver coins from his pouch and passed them to Du-N-K, who promptly stored them in the counter. Lin Mu took the 2 tools and stored them in the empty sack. He then walked out of the shop and went towards the main street. After Lin Mu was gone, Du-N-K was still staring at the door for a while, until the door behind her opened and the old man Jing Wei walked out. "Was it the boy?" asked Jing Wei to Du-N-K. "Yes, it was that boy Lin Mu. He came to sell more materials," answered Du-N-K. Jing Wei looked closely at his granddaughter's expression and asked, "Was something different with the boy?" "You were right before grandfather," spoke Du-N-K. Jing Wei raised his brows in question. "The boy is in the 6th stage of the body tempering realm," explained Du-N-K upon seeing her grandfather's questioning gaze. Jing Wei too was a little surprised, like Du-N-K upon knowing this. The boy definitely has some secrets. There is no other way he could reach the 6th stage of the body tempering realm this fast. "I'm even thinking someone may be backing him," said Jing Wei, after thinking a little. "Grandfather, if someone is backing him and is able to hide themselves from you, they must have a high level of cultivation. We need to find out and verify this, or it could be problematic for us," said Du-N-K. "No, wait for a while. We have been hiding here for all these years now. If we expose ourselves this early, all our plans could go to waste," said Jing Wei with a firm tone. Du-N-K was a little taken aback from her grandfather's reaction but did not question it. Back on the main street, Lin Mu was looking for an inn. He wanted to see if he could get a room in one of the inns. He knew that it could be a little difficult as the other hunters who did not have houses in the town must have already booked the inns beforehand for the winter. He reached the first inn and walked in through the door. There were already many people standing around in the lobby. Most of them looked like they were merchants with some hunters and common folk mixed in. Lin Mu went up to the person sitting at the front desk and asked, "Do you have rooms available?" "No, sorry, we are already booked for 3 days from today, and if you were asking to stay for the duration of the winter then you'll have to come back 3 days later to inquire," said the person sitting at the desk in a practiced manner, as if he had already repeated the same sentence many times. Upon hearing the man's answer, Lin Mu walked out of the inn and went ahead to check the other inns on the street. He ended up checking all the inns in the street and got a similar answer. They either told him to come back in 3 days as the merchants had booked them all, or that they were completely booked for the winter. I guess I must come back 3 days later then. Worst that could happen is that I can't find a room and I'll have to rent a small house instead. At least I have plenty of money now, thought Lin Mu. Failing in his search for an inn, Lin Mu went back to the main square where all the merchants had set up their stalls and shops. He had left behind the sled that he had made, with the merchant who had bought the 2 beast corpses from him. He did not want to pull the sled around the town, so he thought to get it later on if he could not find a room today. He reached the square 10 minutes later and talked to the young man who had taken the beast corpses with him. The young man pointed him towards the cages, at the side of which his handmade sled was kept. Lin Mu thanked the young man and started pulling the sled out of the town. Now that there was no weight on the sled, it was much easier for Lin Mu to pull it. He exited the town after 15 minutes, unaware that 2 men had followed him the entire time. They stayed far from him, so he did not notice them at all. He had to travel about halfway to the hunting shack before he could store the sled in the ring, as there were more travelers and hunters who were going towards the town now than in the morning. When he finally reached a remote enough place, he stored the sled in the ring. But this time there were 2 men who were hiding behind a knoll, who had seen the sled disappear. The 2 men were shocked but then remembered what they had seen before in the morning and understood that Lin Mu had a spatial storage treasure as well. The greed in their eyes was blazing now. They were already thinking about how rich they were going to be after they kill Lin Mu and take away his belongings. The 2 men took out their weapons and held them in their hands before approaching Lin Mu. "Stop right there, brat," spoke one of the men. "Ah, not again," was the only thought that Lin Mu had upon hearing the voice that came from behind him. Chapter 26, First Kill. Chapter 26, First Kill. Lin Mu quickly turned around to face the people that called him from behind. He saw 2 men standing before him, one of them was muscular and the other was thin but tall. The muscular one was holding a club in his hand and was wearing some light leather armor, while the tall one was holding an axe in his hand and was wearing rough hunting clothes. The one who had called Lin Mu was the muscular man. He was looking at Lin Mu with eyes that were dripping with greed. As soon as Lin Mu saw the man's look, he understood that they were here to rob him. Lin Mu sighed inwardly with relief, as he had already stored everything valuable on him, into the ring. So even if the men searched him, they will not find anything. Though Lin Mu did not know whether these men were some common thieves that targeted him randomly or if they knew he had a lot of money with him. "What do you want?" Lin Mu asked with a neutral tone, not wanting to outright offend them. "Give us all your money and belongings, brat," said the muscular man with a rough accent. Lin Mu's eyes narrowed upon hearing the man's accent. He could not place where he had heard it before, but it definitely was not from this region. That means the men probably came here with the merchants. It also did not seem like they belonged to a mercenary group, they were far too ill-equipped. Not wanting to argue with the men, Lin Mu took the coin pouch that only had a silver and few copper coins in it, and threw it to the men. "There, take it, that's all I have," said Lin Mu. The tall man picked it up and emptied it out. Both the men saw that the coin pouch had a meager amount of money in it and knew that Lin Mu must have stored it all in a spatial treasure. The only thing they did not know was where Lin Mu had hidden the spatial treasure. They could not see him wearing any spatial treasure like a ring or bracelet. "Don't try to fool us, you worthless brat, give us everything you have," said the muscular man with a threatening tone. "We know you have a spatial treasure. So spill everything out, don't try to act smart," added the tall man. As soon as Lin Mu heard the tall man's sentence, a mix of emotions could be seen colliding in his eyes. It would have been fine if they pestered him for his sword or money, he could have just run away like before, but now that they knew his secrets, there was no way Lin Mu could let this go. Lin Mu unsheathed his short sword and looked at the men with a fierce expression. The two men were a little taken aback by his sudden change from meek to fierce. "Oh, so you're gonna resist? Let's see if you can take this blow from Daddy," said the muscular man as he stepped forward to swing the club at Lin Mu. Lin Mu sidestepped to dodge the blow and swung the short sword at the muscular man's waist. The man saw the slash and dodged it easily. The tall man also joined the fight and swung the axe at Lin Mu's arm. Lin Mu was able to parry it with the short sword, but felt a strong shock that made his arm hurt. The tall man was stronger than Lin Mu and the muscular man. He was in the 7th stage of the body tempering realm. "Watch out, second brother, this brat is in the 6th stage of the body tempering realm," said the tall man to the muscular man. The muscular man was surprised on hearing that this boy, who was still wet behind the ears, was as strong as him, an adult who had been training for years. "So, you have confidence in your strength, brat, that's why you're so arrogant. It's a shame that I will break it today," taunted the muscular man. Both the men attacked together in an effort to swiftly finish Lin Mu, but he rolled away and all their weapons could hit was the earth. "Damn it, you slippery loach!" cursed the tall man. This time the two men approached Lin Mu from opposite sides, leaving him with a tiny area for movement. The tall man slashed his axe first, which Lin Mu blocked with his short sword, but felt the impact of the blow in his wrist. The muscular man, seeing that Lin Mu was stuck defending against the tall man, attacked his head with the club. Lin Mu sensed the movement of the muscular man and quickly withdrew the skinning knife he had bought and threw it at the face of the tall man. The tall man had to move aside to dodge the skinning knife that was flying at him. He was surprised as he could not see where Lin Mu had pulled the knife from, thus could not completely dodge the knife, and his ear was cut at the lobe. "You dare hurt first brother, brat!" shouted the muscular man while swinging the club. Lin Mu grasped the moment when the muscular man paused for a moment to look at the tall man and swiftly cut the club in the man's hand. The club's head was made of metal, but the handle was still made of wood. The muscular man was now unarmed, and only a piece of wood was left in his hand. "I can't keep on blocking the axe with my sword, his swinging force is much stronger than mine," thought Lin Mu. Seeing that his club got cut, the muscular man was enraged even more. He dropped the piece of handle left in his hand and swung his fist at Lin Mu. This time Lin Mu could not completely dodge the attack. He was hit by the muscular man's punch in the back and dropped his sword, which was blocking the tall man's axe. Lin Mu forcefully pushed back and did a side roll, so that the axe would not hit his head. But the muscular man was already ready to deliver the next blow, and with the axe approaching him, Lin Mu could not do much. "Ha ha ha, now he's done for," said the muscular man. "Die," shouted the tall man. Lin Mu thought that this was the end for him when suddenly his body turned blurry. The two men thought that they imagined this, but when the blade of the axe was about to hit Lin Mu, it just passed through Lin Mu as if he was made of air. Similarly, the muscular man's punch too passed through his body unobstructed. Lin Mu could not think of anything at that moment and spun around to escape from between the men. In the same spinning motion, he seamlessly withdrew the wood-chopping axe from his ring and buried it in the base of the muscular man's skull. Lin Mu left the axe stuck in the muscular man's skull and instead entered the stance of the boulder collapsing fist. His breath melded with his movement and agitated the vital energy within his body. At that moment he reached a level of harmony and a small string of energy spun inside his right hand and formed a small spiral, which looked unstable and felt like it would dissipate any moment. The tall man was frozen at the sight of the bloodied axe, which was stuck in the head of his second brother. Lin Mu saw this and grasped this golden opportunity. He gathered every ounce of his strength and stuck the tall man at the very center of his chest. The tall man felt his ribs crack and his breath was knocked out of his lungs. Lin Mu broke the stance and suppressed the pulsating pain in his right hand. He picked up the short sword that was lying on the ground, with his left arm and swiftly slashed the neck of the tall man, decapitating him. Lin Mu was now laying down on the ground, exhausted. He did not know why, but after the attacks of the two men passed through him, he felt as if half of his energy reserves were drained, and using the axe and boulder collapsing fist depleted the rest, leaving him with a bare smidgen of energy, which he used to decapitate the tall man. He was out of breath and his hand was throbbing with pain, leaving him unable to move. He was completely unguarded, and anyone could kill him right now with no effort. Lin Mu must have lied on the ground for more than an hour, as the sun in the sky had moved a significant distance. After he felt a slight reduction in his fatigue and some energy being recovered, Lin Mu stood up and finally saw the entirety of his handiwork. He saw the muscular man who had the wood-chopping axe stuck in his head, lying dead behind him, and the now headless, tall man beside him. Lin Mu swallowed the sickening feeling that was rising from his throat and collected his wits. He first stored the short sword in the ring, not bothering to put it in the sheath. Then he pulled out the axe from the muscular man's head and left a pool of blood behind. An idea then came to his mind, and he stored the corpses of the men in his ring as well. He could not just leave them lying in the middle of the path and have someone discover them. He would be incriminated if someone was able to link these two men to him. He also searched for the skinning knife and found it lying a little farther than the decapitated head of the tall man. He picked up the head and stored it in the ring as well, along with the knife. Now the only evidence that was left behind was the pools of blood on the ground. He spent some time covering it with mud and soil. Once the blood was hidden beneath the dirt, he looked around for anyone spying on him. He confirmed that no one had witnessed him by checking any footprints around the area. He did not find any fresh footprints in an area of 100 meters. Knowing that he could only leave the rest to luck, Lin Mu broke into a sprint and ran all the way to the small stream beside the apple tree. Once he reached the stream, he washed up and changed out of the soiled clothes, which had traces of blood on them. He rested for a while, soaking his sore feet in the cold water and massaging his right hand, which was now aching less than before. He was incredibly hungry and felt like he could eat until his stomach would burst. Lin Mu stood up and walked to the hunting shack. Once at the hunting shack, Lin Mu took out the remaining meat of the red-snouted boar and skewered it with a stick and hung it on the large stove outside the shack. While the meat roasted, he put some rice in the pot to cook. He sprinkled the spices on the roasting meat and watched it cook. Soon enough an intense aroma rose from the meat, which made it irresistible to Lin Mu. Ignoring the scalding heat, Lin Mu tore off an entire leg and devoured it like a barbarian. Chapter 27, Progress in the Martial Technique. Chapter 27, Progress in the Martial Technique. After Lin Mu was done eating, he could not even believe that he had eaten half of an entire boar by himself. He looked at his belly and found it to be stretched taut, but there was still no way that all that meat could fit inside there. Since he could not figure it out, he just dropped the thought. He had more important things to do for now. Lin Mu could feel a massive amount of energy being absorbed from the meat in his stomach. He sat down cross-legged to chant the calming Heart Sutra. He felt the energy being assimilated in his muscles and in his skin. This time he could focus even deeper and could sense a slight trickle of energy permeating his blood vessels. Is this the next tier of the body tempering realm? But isn't it only after reaching the 8th stage that one can temper their blood vessels, so why can I feel them strengthening very slightly, thought Lin Mu. The hypothesis that Lin Mu had in the morning about being able to assimilate more vital energy proved to be true. Even though he still had around 40% of energy still being stored in the body, he still assimilated more vital energy than ever before. It also took him around 45 minutes before he stopped chanting the calming Heart Sutra and could not assimilate any more vital energy. He looked up at the sun and guessed it should be around 5 p.m. Now that he had completely finished the entire boar, he needed to get more meat. Lin Mu wondered if he should not have sold the meat of the two beasts. Those two beasts were much stronger than the red-snouted boar and would have had an even greater amount of vital energy in them. Lin Mu first decided to check the traps and then go further into the forest, if he did not catch anything in them. He also needed to dispose of the two corpses of the men, and what better way than to dump them in the forest and let the beasts deal with them. He reached the trail where he had set up the traps after 10 minutes. He checked the first 3 snares and found nothing caught in them. The next one he checked had a thorn-tailed rat caught in it, which he could not eat. He broke the neck of the thorn-tailed rat and kept it in the ring to use it as a bait. He then checked the remaining 2 traps and found them to be empty as well. Getting unsatisfactory results with the traps, Lenmu decided to just abandon them and only check them for bait in the future. Lenmu switched the path and walked deeper into the forest. He found a larger trail where there were tracks of larger beasts and dumped the dead bodies of the 2 men near it for the beasts to eat. He also checked their bodies for valuables and found 22 silvers combined on both the men. He also took the light leather armor from the muscular man. He tried it on and found it to be too big for him. He could only tighten it and bind it roughly to be able to wear it. He still put it on, as some protection is still better than none. Lenmu searched for fresh tracks of beasts to hunt. It took him half an hour to find some hoof tracks. He guessed them to be of a juvenile 6-pronged stag that had probably been separated from its herd. Lenmu followed the tracks for a few hundred meters, after which he found the juvenile 6-pronged stag grazing at some grass behind a thicket. He silently approached the beast, making sure not to step on any sticks and avoid making any noise. It was Lenmu's luck that there was headwind blowing, which prevented the beast from smelling his scent. Once Lenmu was a few steps away from the beast, he focused his strength on his legs and lunged at the beast, who was completely unaware. The short sword was able to slash the neck of the beast, who started to bleed profusely. Because of the intense pain, the beast instantly collapsed on the ground, unable to run. Lenmu quickly touched the beast and put it inside the ring, as he did not want the cries of the beast and the scent of the blood to attract other beasts. Done with his hunt, Lenmu turned back, as the sun had already started to set. He reached the hunting shack after 50 minutes and then went towards the stream to skin and prepare the beast. He drained the remaining blood and then started to skin the juvenile 6-pronged stag. While he was skinning the beast with the new skinning knife he had bought, a thought appeared in his mind. When he had thrown the knife at the tall man, only the knife had appeared without its sheath. But now when he withdrew the knife to skin the beast, the knife appeared with its sheath. He was intrigued and wanted to test it out, so he stored the knife back in the ring and then withdrew it. The knife appeared in its sheath. He then tried it another time, this time only wanting to withdraw the knife and not the sheath. He succeeded, and only the knife appeared in his hand. It seems like I can control what I want to withdraw, even if the 2 objects are attached. Lenmu concluded. Amazed by this new discovery, Lenmu continued his task of skinning the beast. After he was done completely skinning the beast, he put the meat and other materials away in the ring. From the juvenile 6-pronged stag, he obtained its pelt and small undeveloped horns. Even though the beast was only a juvenile, it was still roughly in the 4th stage of the body tempering realm. Humans and beasts simply cannot be compared. Even a juvenile is strong enough to compare to an average adult man, thought Lenmu. After he was done with the beast, Lenmu started to practice the boulder collapsing fist. Since he had experienced some success after using it during the fight, Lenmu was optimistic in progressing further. Lenmu stood in the stance, regulated his breathing according to the breathing technique, and then started to practice the fist routine. He felt like his coordination had indeed increased than before. Though he could not perform the same as he did during the fight. The vital energy in his body did get agitated, but it still got stuck and could not find the right path. He focused on the feeling he got during the fight, on the spiral of energy that had formed in his hand. Lenmu continued practicing until it was midnight and stars were painted across the night sky. Eventually, after countless tries, he felt the same spiral of energy forming in his hand. As soon as the spiral formed in his hand, it stayed stable for a few breaths, before starting to dissipate. Sensing that the energy spiral was getting unstable, Lenmu executed the technique and threw a punch. This time he could properly see with his eyes the effect of the technique. The punch that stuck the air generated a small gust of wind that made the leaves on the tree 4 meters away from him shake and fall down. Lin Mu collapsed on the ground after executing the technique, as he felt all the energy he had obtained from the previous meal depleted. He struggled to sit cross-legged but was able to sit and chant the calming heart sutra. Lin Mu finally felt the remaining vital energy that was stored in the body, assimilating into his muscles and skin. After 30 minutes he had completely assimilated all the energy and was hungry once more. He went back to the hunting shack to prepare his dinner. Lin Mu ate with gusto and replenished his stamina. After he was done eating, he laid down on the wooden bed and soon fell asleep. Lin Mu appeared in the sleepscape and continued his practice. After some time, he felt like he could not progress anymore as he needed to feel the vital energy within his body to be able to execute the technique. So Lin Mu decided to sit down and recall the memories of the fight. Lin Mu did not understand some aspects of the fight, thus wanted to analyze every part of it. In the sleepscape, Lin Mu was able to clearly recall his memories. He went over them again and again, analyzing his mistakes and finding possible solutions to them. In the end, he was able to understand all aspects of his fight except for one big mystery. Lin Mu could not understand how he was able to dodge the pincer attacks of the two men. He did not understand how the attacks simply passed through his body as if it was made of air. Now that he closely recalled it, he remembered that at that moment, a fuzzy feeling spread throughout his body. He felt as if a thin invisible sheet of some kind had wrapped his body in its entirety. The next thing that happened after it was that he felt a great drain on his energy. About half of his entire store was depleted. He could not find the reason for that, and in the end, reached the conclusion that it was related to the mysterious ring. Somehow the ring had enabled him to dodge those attacks. I wonder if I can replicate that again. If I can, it would be a major skill I can use in future battles that I'll have, thought Lin Mu, before he left the sleepscape and woke up. Lin Mu stood up and the first thing he did was to set up some meat to cook on the stove. He found himself thinking more and more about food, as he trained each day. After he was done with that, he went outside to practice the boulder collapsing fist. From the minor success he had obtained last night, he was able to build on that experience. He continued training until he was sweaty and tired. The breakfast was long ready for him to eat. Once he was done with the meal, he followed the routine and sat down to chant the calming heart sutra to assimilate the vital energy. He could feel that he had progressed a little further in his training and was on his way to the 7th stage of the body tempering realm. Suddenly Lin Mu felt like he had forgotten something and remembered the reason why he had put himself in danger 2 days ago. He withdrew the purple grape-sized fruit and stared at it while thinking. Should I eat it? Chapter 28, Rescue. Chapter 28, Rescue. Lin Mu was contemplating whether this would be the right time to eat the spirit fruit or if he should wait till he reaches the 7th stage of the body tempering realm. The beasts were fighting to eat this fruit, and the ape beast was in the 7th stage. Maybe I should wait until I'm at least at the 7th stage of the body tempering stage as well. Though Lin Mu, he did not know what kind of effect the fruit would have on him, so Lin Mu felt like it would be better if he gets a little stronger before eating it. Lin Mu thus put the grape-sized purple fruit away. Lin Mu stood up and decided to go hunt some beasts in the forest. He needed more and more meat if he wanted to keep up with the requirements of his training. Hence he entered the forest and searched for some beasts. By the time Lin Mu returned to the hunting shack, it was already dark. He had been able to kill 2 beasts this time. One was a black-horned rabbit, and another was a red-snouted boar's piglet. These 2 beasts would not provide him with much meat, but should last for at least 2 meals. Lin Mu continued his practice with the boulder collapsing fist and found himself steadily improving at the end of the training session. He then ate his dinner and chanted the calming heart sutra. Soon after he finished chanted the calming heart sutra and was about to sleep, he felt a spatial rift about to open. The spatial rift opened just a few feet away from the hunting shack, thus he did not have to worry about entering the forest at night. Lin Mu searched inside the spatial rift and found a small pebble this time. He observed it closely but could not find anything peculiar about it. Lin Mu was utterly tired and went to sleep. In the sleepscape he recalled today's training and analyzed it and tried to identify his mistakes. He continued his practice in the sleepscape and improved his coordination between the breathing technique and the fist routine. After waking up, he wanted to take a bath as he did not take one yesterday due to feeling too lazy and tired. The water in the stream had become colder, a sign of the approaching winter. Lin Mu also picked some sour apples while he was there. He had an idea that he wanted to try out. In the hunting shack, he added the black-horned rabbit's meat along with some spices and condiments. But this time he also chopped up one of the sour apples finely and added it to the stew. He trained while the stew got ready. A different aroma could be smelled coming from the pot. The stew had a little tartness that balanced the spices and cut the excess fat in the meat. It tasted refreshing to Lin Mu, and he thought he should cook with this method more often. Lin Mu went to the forest again to hunt some beasts. While in the forest, he heard the sounds of fighting. He had taken his regular route, but this was the first time he had seen people on it. He followed the sounds and reached a clearing, which seemed like it was man-made. The trees were cleared in a radius. He had come here a couple of days ago and the trees were still there. He continued towards the source of the sound and reached it after a minute. Lin Mu peeked from behind a bush and saw a group of men fighting 3 steel-back wolves. There were 4 corpses of steel-back wolves lying on the ground, probably killed by the men. He took a closer look at their armor and spotted a symbol on each person. It was the symbol for fierce blood mercenaries. They were probably a part of the mercenary groups that had come to the town this week. There were 5 people fighting the steel-back wolves. 2 of which were injured in multiple places and were dripping blood as they fought. The remaining 3 mercenaries did not look to be injured, but one could see the numerous claw marks and scratches on their armor. Lin Mu decided to stand back and not interfere in their fight. One of the basic etiquettes of hunters was to not get involved in other hunters' fights unless asked or if they were in immediate danger. Lin Mu could only guess that it was the same for mercenaries as well. He watched the mercenaries fight for 5 minutes, until another mercenary had gotten injured and was bleeding as well. They had also managed to kill one of the remaining steel-back wolves. But it still looked like the steel-back wolves had the upper hand and the mercenaries had become tired. Lin Mu could see that they were getting slow and making mistakes. "Keep it up, brothers, we just have these 2 beasts left and then we can rest for the entire month," spoke one of the mercenaries who was injured. "Damn it, I knew we should have retreated beforehand, now we don't even have enough stamina left for that," complained the mercenary who had just gotten injured. "Shut it, you two, and focus on the beasts," shouted the man who seemed to be their leader. While fighting, one of the mercenaries missed his step while dodging and fell down. Taking this opportunity, one of the wolves lunged at the fallen man. "No, hold the beast back," shouted the leader as he tried to block the beast but could not as the beast was much faster and the other steel-back wolf had also interrupted the mercenaries. The injured mercenary who had fallen was still reeling from the impact of falling and could not respond in time. All the mercenaries were tense and had already accepted that they were going to lose one of their brothers in arms. But as they continued watching in shock, the steel-back wolf who was in mid-air was suddenly hit with an immense force and was knocked into a tree. When the mercenaries looked at the steel-back wolf that was knocked away, they found it to be missing a major part of its skull. The mercenaries who had fallen opened his eyes and found Lin Mu standing over him in a horse stance with his right arm extended. He could see the gory remains of the steel-back wolf stuck to his fist and his face. The other steel-back wolf was startled by the sudden demise of its companion. The mercenaries took advantage of this and killed the beast with a coordinated pincer attack, which it could not dodge. All the mercenaries exhaled with relief, now that the danger had passed. After his nerves had calmed down, the leader turned to face the person who had saved their companion. The person in question was still standing in the horse stance and had his eyes closed. Lin Mu was currently trying to carve the feeling he got when he executed the boulder collapsing fist into his mind. He had nearly been able to perfectly execute the technique just now, but it was still lacking in the proper utilization of vital energy. The spiral of energy that formed in his hand collapsed before it could be released properly. Lin Mu heard someone calling him and opened his eyes. "Thank you for saving our companion, boy," said the leader of the group who was standing in front of Lin Mu. Yes, it's fine," said Lin Mu awkwardly. Lin Mu was expecting them to be a little angry, but it was completely different than he thought. Since Lin Mu was so focused on memorizing the feeling of the martial technique, he did not realize that his face was bloodied, and when he talked, some blood entered his mouth and made him spit it out in disgust. "Tui, that was disgusting," thought Lin Mu. The leader of the mercenaries was also a little stunned by Lin Mu's awkward response and the subsequent act of spitting. The other mercenaries had also gathered to pick up and support their injured companion. They brought him towards Lin Mu and spoke. "We give our heartfelt thanks to you," said the men in unison. "We would like to reward you for saving our companion," said the leader. Lin Mu was a little surprised by the mercenaries' offer and thought for a moment before answering. "Can I have the meat of the steel-back wolf?" "That's all?" questioned the leader with raised brows. "Yeah, that's not enough for the help you provided us. You at least have to take an entire beast corpse," said the mercenary who was nearly killed by the beast. "No, right now I only have the need for beast meat," replied Lin Mu while shaking his head. "But for a person of your standing, you deserve more than that," said the leader. Lin Mu's brows were wrinkled in confusion of the leader's words. He did not understand what the leader meant by a person of your standing. "Yes, as a disciple of a martial sect, you can rightfully demand more. We won't mind it," said another mercenary. Lin Mu finally understood why the mercenaries were being so generous and courteous. They had mistaken him for a disciple of a martial sect. With the power Lin Mu had displayed and his young age, it was no wonder they had mistakenly assumed he was a disciple of a martial sect. As even a person in the 8th stage of the body tempering realm would find it nearly impossible to split the tough skull of a steel-back wolf. "Okay then, I'll take as much meat as you can spare," replied Lin Mu after thinking for a moment. Lin Mu thought that now that he had this free opportunity to get the meat of a strong beast, he may as well take it and not correct the mercenaries' assumption. Part 2 of the series ends here. If you enjoyed it, please give us a like and subscribe so we can be motivated to make even better videos in the future.